Welcome, everyone, to episode 50 of the Single Malt Strategy Podcast. I'm your host, Jean, the Strategy Wargamer, and I am here, of course, with my faithful and dependable partners in crime, Eric, Tortuga Power, and Matt, the Historical Gamer. Welcome, guys. What's going on?
So, are we going to call me Eric or Tortuga this episode? I just want to get it out of the way.
I don't know, but in our multiplayer game the other day, I realized, I just call you Tortuga all the time, and I was thinking to myself, is that weird?
I don't know. I call you THG, so...
So when you guys meet in real life, everybody's going to be kind of like frowning on you. It's like, what the fuck are they talking about? Who the fuck are these people?
Yeah, I hope that one of my hopes is that I will meet THG sometime in 2020. 2020? What's that? We're in the year 2020? Is that a good
Great
Scott. Probably not.
What happens to me in the future?
I just met with some friends. Today. It was a friend was in town. It's his birthday, but he was in town for his wife's dental convention. So we got together, we hung out, and 3 or 4 friends, we kind of all got together, and we all went to high school together. And one of them was talking about my YouTube channel, and they made a comment about my logo. They're like, "Oh, you stole the History Channel logo," and they just added a musket to the side. I was like, "No, it doesn't look anything like the font is different, the 3D is different, it's all different." But apparently,
ooh, I have a good idea for a cover art now for this episode. So this episode, since it's 5-0, we decided to do top anticipated games of 2020. And we do realize that this episode is probably releasing on or close to March. We're not that far back.
May.
How long are you going to take to edit this thing, Jean?
December. We promise it'll be there before 2021.
We could record our most anticipated of 2021 right now. I don't know what would be on the list, but just make some stuff up.
I think a lot of the games I have in my 2020 will probably end up being on my list for 2021. So
I've realized I've done that with the last. I looked at my YouTube videos for the last 3 years of my most anticipated list, and I always do a list of 5. And I'm pretty sure not more than 2 games have ever come out in the year I've said that I'm excited about them for. But anyway, yeah, so this is episode number 50, and today we're going to be talking about our most anticipated most anticipated games that'll be coming out this year, and a little bit of what we've been playing lately as well.
Yeah, let's start off with that. John, what have you been playing lately?
I have been playing... Well, I'm finishing up Strategic Command World War I. Amazing game, love it. But my time has been being stolen by a few other games. One, EU4, which I know you guys are in a nice little tournament in, which I do want to pick your brains on, because I'm kind of curious about how you, Matt and Eric feel about EU4, especially after all these DLCs. So I kind of got reinvigorated into the EU4 gaming mantra here. But another game now has kind of stolen me from EU4, and that game is Hearts of Iron 4 because of the new DLC, La Resistance. Have you guys tried out the La Resistance? I know it's coming out in a couple of days. I think it's last week of February it's coming out. Have you guys been keeping track of it, or maybe play the beta?
I have
not. I got an email about it.
Yeah, I'm planning to actually play it tomorrow. So if we want to just pause this recording and give me 24 hours.
Reschedule.
No, I have not played it either.
Yeah, I'm excited about it, but I have no first-hand experience as of yet.
Are you a big Hearts of Iron player, or do you play a lot?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Hearts of Iron 2 may be one of my most played games of all time. Hearts of Iron 3 would also be up there. Hearts of Iron 4 is a little bit less played than the previous 2, but it's still popular.
Why is that, though? I'm kind of curious. Why do you feel like it's why is it less?
Well, yeah, I mean, for people who come from Hearts of Iron 3, the main problem that people found with Hearts of Iron 3 is that it was too hard to get into. If you did manage to get into it, it's pretty good. It's great. And there's definitely some aspects, I mean, especially when Hearts of Iron 4 came out, like the production system and all this. I mean, this is probably a talk for another time, but But basically, Hearts of Iron 3 is more complicated. It's more detailed. It's a little bit more annoying in its complexity. But if you like to micromanage everything, it's better.
Yeah, I mean, I like Hearts of Iron 3. I really loved it. The only thing that I didn't like them removing, and I think we talked to, or I believe we talked to the lead designer for Hearts of Iron 4. The only thing I wish they kept in was the core system. So like going from divisions to corps to armies and army groups. I know they removed the core, so... You know, you basically just have divisions and armies and then army groups. I know it's a little thing, but I do like having that kind of structure in there. But everything else about Hearts of Iron 4, with all these DLCs that they added, I'm just like amazed. One thing that I'm actually in a game right now with a buddy of mine, and I'm totally getting fucked over, right? Like, he's taking over all of Europe, and I'm like, I'm England, so like, I'm right at the shore, and I'm like, holy shit, what do I do? He's just gonna develop, like, you know, transports and just head on over and do a little, operation. What the fuck was that name, operation?
There were a lot.
I was gonna say Barbarossa, but no. No, the one... No, the Germans are landing on Sea Lion.
The one that didn't happen.
Yeah, thankfully. But one amazing thing that I love about Hearts of Iron 4 is you can mine the ports, the provinces. So wherever his fleet is, I could just mine the shit out of it and kind of, alleviate some of that tension that I've been feeling.
Well, so Sean is playing EU4, Hearts of Iron 4, some Strategic Command World War 1. I am also playing Strategic Command World War 1. I'm also playing a little bit of EU4. I'm getting kind of like my 2D top-down space exploration itch scratched lately with a free title called Endless Space. I don't know if either of you are familiar with the Escape Velocity titles from back in the 90s, or if you've heard of this newer game that's pretty similar, Star Sector. I've always liked that kind of genre, or if you know the X series with like Ck3 Terran Conflict, Ck3 Reunion. Okay, if all those draw a blank for you, then I like the space exploration, trading, combat type genre, and I've been playing a bit of Endless Space. Actually, in my Strategic Command World War 1, I'm doing a play-by-email multiplayer series, which is pretty rare for me. I'm very timid playing against other people, unless it's co-op. So... I've started a new series on Rule the Waves 2. That game's in constant development. And
Oh, they keep adding stuff to it? You notice?
Mostly they're trying to fix, thankfully, they're trying to fix the user issues, like the difficulty in managing aircraft, which I think THG can attest to. or maybe not. We didn't actually get that far in our progression series or succession series.
Other than using them for scouting aircraft, like by the time you get to the point where there's just swarms and swarms of land-based aircraft, I typically end my series because I just don't find that terribly interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. So I've been playing a lot of things. I guess I've been keeping pretty busy. Dungeon Crawl, Stone Soup, another fun one. Yeah, and then Flying Smile too. I don't know how the heck I'm juggling all these things, but I guess it's been a long time.
You've been playing a lot of fucking games, Tortuga.
But it's been a long time since we've recorded an episode, so... Okay, the truth of the matter is this. My hard drive, my main boot solid-state drive, crashed about 2-3 weeks ago, and so now I had the duty of going on Steam and being like, what do I want to install? And then... after I started installing things, I would sample everything I was installing. So that's just how it happened. But okay, well, THG, what are you playing?
I've been playing a lot of EU4, which is a game that I've had, and this is going to sound absurd, but I've had EU4 for like 5 years or so, and I basically never played it. I don't think I've ever played it on Steam. I think I played an off-Steam version of it briefly. But I probably had less than 2 hours of EU4 in my history, and I've been playing it. I've been really enjoying it. I think there's... you said something the other day when we were playing together, Tortuga, that I think I'm really experiencing, and that is, it's amazing to come to a game like this for the first time when it is so fleshed out and polished, compared to... and this isn't to dig... but compared to, like a brand new Paradox game, the games evolve so much over time. And so, like, when you come to a game when it first releases, for example, I'll say Hearts of Iron 4, because you were talking about that, John. I really enjoyed Hearts of Iron 4 when it came out. I played a lot of Hearts of Iron 4 when it came out. And then as they started layering on these other DLCs and other expansions, I kind of fell away from the series. And it wasn't because I didn't like it. Actually, Hearts of Iron 4 was probably the first Hearts of Iron game I really played a ton of. And I have Hearts of Iron 2 on a disc in the closet next to me. I have Hearts of Iron 3, in my library as well. And those games just kind of, I think part of it was they were so obtuse and you had to learn so much that I kind of never had the time or devoted the time to it. And Hearts of Iron 4 was really easy to pick up and play and just enjoy. And so I experienced that with Hearts of Iron 4, but then when they started layering in all the different DLCs, every time one of those games came out, it kind of felt like I had to go back and I had to relearn everything, and that takes time, and that takes effort, and that takes mental processing. And if it's, one of your favorite games, like a lot of people out there who really enjoy the series, you're probably going to do that. But for me, it wasn't, it was good, but it wasn't something that would prevent me from playing a bunch of other things that were coming out, and so I just kind of fell away from it. Coming into EU4, I'm just astounded because, again, we've been playing online with some folks who have all the DLCs, so we can play all of them, and it is a tremendous game. And to come to a Paradox game for the first time late in its life cycle, it is truly remarkable to see how deep, how well put together the game is, and just how much of a joy it is to play. And I think that's one of the things that I've written.
What attracts you? What attracts you about the game? Like, what's like the main thing that kind of like won your heart over?
I mean, the main thing, I enjoyed the era. I think I would say I enjoy the late period of EU4 more so than the early period. But, I've been playing mostly as German states and sort of trying to weave yourself between the politics of all the different German states and getting the right states to like you so that you can become the Holy Roman Empire or Emperor is quite a lot of fun. And then also, making sure you don't get, stomped on by one of the other bigger German states, because they don't like you because you switch to Protestantism or what have you. I think it's really the political element. Hearts of Iron really... Is it fair to say Hearts of Iron really doesn't have diplomatic relations?
Yeah.
I think...
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Because, I'm playing as England, and I asked my buddy, I was just like, hey, how do I get the U.S. in the war? And they're like, really nothing. You have to kind of just, like, let them get down that path. And I'm like, so there's nothing I can do. I'm kind of fucked. And he was like, yeah, pretty much. I'm like, shit. Just
to kind of wrap this all up, I think what really interests me about EU4... Crusader Kings has a bit of this, but it's really a game about families and dynasties. EU4 is really a game about international politics, at least that's my view, and obviously expanding your control and taking over. But when you play as a German state, you have to be a lot more careful and thoughtful about that. Unless one of your friends is playing as Poland, and then they can come rescue you anytime you get in trouble. But in general, it's more a game about politics and building your empire, and it is the closest thing I can find to a newer version of Victoria, because the end of the era kind of starts to nuzzle up against that era of history, and so I don't know. I'd say that's a big part of what I've been enjoying. I will say that playing EU4 is making me long for Victoria 3 even more than I already was. So I really wanted to come out sometime soon.
I mean, it's a really good point. This is what people love and hate about Paradox, that their titles get tons of attention. This is like, in theory, can't be a bad thing. They're just improving their games. Even if their DLC was free, though, you have, unfortunately, this mechanic where unless you're playing the game consistently, month by month by month, you can go away for a year and come back and not even know how to play the game anymore. So, yeah. That's the frustration. I've felt that frustration with EU4 several times. I've gone away and come back, I think 2 or 3 times, and every time it's like, oh my gosh, I don't know all the mechanics anymore. I don't really understand what I'm doing, and it's
it's nice to be able to come to it fresh and not have all the baggage of what you've learned previously, and also have it so, again, it's no game is perfect. In any game of this size, there's going to be things in it that you wish were different. But to be able to come to a game that is just so well put together and not have those preconceived notions of what you have to unlearn, I think that's
Yeah, you're in a unique situation, and I envy you. That is pretty cool.
But I would say that's also if you haven't tried Paradox games in the past, obviously, I recommend looking for a sale, but they've done a pretty good job of like Humble Bundle and some other games where you've been able to get a huge portion of the DLC for CK, for EU, over the last, I don't know, couple of months where those games have been heavily discounted. So if those games, you missed them in the past and you just never got to them because the DLC list was too intimidating, which is certainly a thing, then, if you see a good sale and you haven't tried them out, I highly recommend it, because you're right. For most Paradox players, that's a unique experience to be coming at a game from. But I would say if you are in that group of people who haven't tried those games out, I highly recommend it, because Ck3 is about to come out. So Ck2 is obviously kind of at the end of its life. EU4, they haven't announced EU5. It's probably, a year or two away, and I think they're still doing some DLCs for it. But that's at the very end of its life as well. Hearts of Iron is well into its life cycle, but it's a ways in there as well. They're at a point where their catalog is relatively old, and I don't mean that as a negative thing, but their catalog is relatively old and relatively mature. So if you haven't gotten to those games, now is probably a good time to jump in and experience, the sort of the culmination of everything of like 5+ years of game development can deliver you in terms of that holistic experience. It's probably one of the rare times where you can get that from all their games right now.
I'm kind of curious. I wanted to get your guys' feedback. The only one thing that I would say, it's kind of an annoyance, it's not like really a con, but it's an annoyance. Do you guys ever run into like when you're trying to design an infantry division or a custom, through the division designer kind of UI, that you need like army experience? I was trying to like design like an armored division, and I only had armored brigades, and I'm like, I go in and I set up like the, divisions or battalions of tanks, and then I'm about to click save, and I don't have enough army experience. I feel like that took a little bit of the realism out. I'm like, oh, okay, so I have to get army experience to design an infantry division. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
I mean, I can see how it could be a frustration. I think it makes a little bit more sense from the naval experience side. From the air experience side, it definitely makes more sense, because those were, usually it's upgrades or stuff for the naval and air force. But for the land combat, I mean, the good news is that you are always given a generic type of armor and everything when you unlock the research. I think you start with an armored division of some kind of template, right? It's just when you change it that it won't let you do that without army experience.
Yeah, I mean, I can see the argument for it. I think I agree. I think the argument makes more sense from a naval or air combat perspective, because they were learning so much at that time and everything was new. And so, how do you learn not to do something, or how do you learn to optimize something? It's by trying and failing. But I do think the argument to say, like, in order to learn what is absolutely maximum efficiency, you need to go through some failures. So I do think it makes some sense.
The other thing that, I mean, I'm not trying to shit on Hearts of Iron. I really love the game, honestly. As I was playing the stream, especially La Resistance, I was like, holy shit, what Paradox did with this game is incredible. Because the espionage system that they put in, it adds so much more depth into the game. But the only other thing that I would say is another annoyance that I had would be so I'm England, right? And France, the war began. Apparently my buddy transformed the USSR into a fascist country and then invaded Poland, teamed up with Germany, and went to war with me. So I was kind of like up shit's creek, because I had a couple divisions in France, and the French were kind of just like, have just sitting there with their thumb up their ass. And I'm like, let's kind of coordinate, and let's try to like go into Germany before they get into France, and I don't know, steamroll
I
Berlin.
I hate to tell you this, but you've already lost that game. If you're facing Germany and Russia.
So you think so? There is no way I can come out of this if Russia...
Maybe if he gets the nuclear paddle so he can, paddle up that creek.
I would be considering a new game with this guy. If you were already outmaneuvered and Germany and Russia haven't, or the Soviet Union have an alliance, you're boned.
What do you think? What if I bring the U.S. in? Do you think there's a chance?
No.
The same chance that an 0-10 NFL team has in making the playoffs. I mean, theoretically, it's mathematically possible.
Yeah, I mean, if he already outmaneuvered you in that sense, I suspect that he's a good enough player that he won't let such an advantage slip away.
Shit. Yeah, because he said he's going to try to get me out before the U.S. comes in.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that you're going to straight up lose, as in he may not immediately conquer. It may be a slow grind to the death, but there's no way you're ever going to have a presence on Europe, ever. There's no way you're going to have any presence in Asia anymore. Because if he's...
He said he was going to go through Afghanistan all the way to India, and I'm like, damn, dude, that's like, you're going to pretty much take over the world. He says, yeah, technically, I have 150 divisions, and I got another 50 in being developed. I'm like, and my jaw dropped.
Yeah, well, I wish you would luck with that one.
But with that being said, that's what we've been playing lately, so we should probably move on.
Yeah.
The main topic of this episode.
Oh my gosh, who wants to start off? This is so exciting. First of all, we should mention that, full disclosure, it's already mid-February, almost towards the end of February.
And nothing has come out yet, so we're good.
Wait, what?
It's been an incredibly slow start to the year, I feel like, from a games release perspective.
Yeah, I do notice a lot of the games number of games I was following got delayed.
Well, did we already make this joke that a lot of these games we're going to say we're looking forward to in 2020 may not come out in 2020 at all, so.
Don't say that, knock on wood.
How do you guys want to do it, by the way? Do you just want each person to list off all of their, or do we go through
Let's do what we did for the top list. Let's do, Tortuga, what's your number? We're just going to do 3 each, right? So let's just do Tortuga, your number 3, then we'll do Jean's number 3, then my number 3, and we'll kind of circle around.
Oof. Well, let me go last then, because I haven't arranged them numerically like that. I just have I have taken some notes, but I have a list of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 games.
You're going to change it on the fly.
And I need some time to pick which one's 3, 2, and 1.
Okay. I will also say that my list is not organized in any particular order other than to say I have 3 games that I want to talk about that I'm excited about, but I'm not sure, I don't have some sort of formula to say, this game is number 3 versus number 2 versus number 1,
Yeah, I actually cemented my list. I was thinking of editing it, but I'm like, fuck it. I like it. I'm sticking with what I like, So I guess since, do you guys want me to go first and then Matt and then fine. Tortuga?
But also, let's keep this short because I think part of the fun is going to be talking about a lot more than just 3 games. So if we have this, period at the end where we can just kind of gush about all the other ones, that would be great.
Sure.
I will begin my list. Drumroll, please. Panzer Corps 2. This is my third favorite of 2020, or most anticipated. I got a chance to play I would say the beta that they have. If you, I believe, purchase the game early or purchase a certain version of the game, you get access to the beta. So I played it. I really like it. In fact, I'll go as far as I love the game, okay? There's really amazing stuff about the game. I really love the developers' attention to detail about adding so many different units, like Grenadiers. They have all these different tank units, infantry units, and it feels very non-generic, I thought I don't know why I thought this, but I thought I was going to go to Panzer Corps and, they're going to have an armored unit and then they'll have an artillery unit, an infantry unit. No, they have armored units, but they have a shit ton of them and you can customize each one to kind of fit your strategy, which I really do like.
Did you play the original Panzer General by SSI?
From the 90s?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, but my memory is as good as my eyesight, so...
I mean, you could have 20/20 vision for all I know, Sean. That doesn't mean anything. Yeah, I was going to say, I would say like the list of what units are involved are pretty much the same. Maybe there's a little bit more, but I've played the Panzer Corps 2 beta as well. I've enjoyed it. I think it's well done. I do think some of the Russian scenarios get too big and too unwieldy for it really to be an enjoyable gaming experience. I think the early Western European and sort of the Poland invasion, like the smaller operations early on, are very well done. I think my experience with the first couple of battles in the North African campaign is that they're pretty well done. But I think as the game scales up and gets really, really big, I do think it struggles to make it feel unique, and I think some of the scenarios just feel a little too samey. But overall, I've been pretty impressed. I'm excited about it. It's not on my list, but that's definitely a good start to your list.
Let me ask you something, because I know you have a beefy graphics card, and I have a mid-range graphics card. I have an AMD 560 with 4 gigs of video RAM, and it's about a mid-range. I know you have NVIDIA GeForce 2080, basically the Arnold Schwarzenegger of the 1970s.
I have a 1080, not a 20. I mean, 1080 is still a good card even today. I don't think
so. Basically, Arnold Schwarzenegger in the 90s.
Graphics card matters. Like they look nice, but I don't think your graphics card matters. Yeah, if you're looking for games where the graphics card matters, it's not war games typically.
But that's the funny thing, because when I was playing Panzer Corps 2, I did notice that if you're playing the game, and especially on a big map, I only noticed this on big maps, is my frame rate drops around 30 or even goes in the teens. And what's kind of curious is, because we all know, we all have played Hearts of Iron and EU4, and the graphics on there are kind of demanding, or even Imperator, the map and all the units, and everything looks beautiful and requires some graphics power. My graphics card can do EU4, Hearts of Iron very well. I'm in the 30s, 40s, or 50s of the frame rate. But for Panzer Corps 2, I'm going down to the teens. And I notice it kind of hiccups every so often. And I only have this problem whenever a game is designed with the Unity engine. I don't know if the engine requires a lot of horsepower from the graphics card.
I don't think it's graphics card related.
I don't think it's your... Yeah.
It's probably the processor bottleneck.
Well, I have a i5 7th generation Intel processor, 3 gigahertz, and quad core, and generally the benchmarks on that are really high. I mean, I forgot. I think this one was at 16 or 18,000 on Geekbench 4. So I mean, it has a muscle on it, And a good example is I'm playing EU4 toward the end of the game. And I know in the end of the game of EU4, all the processing power is needed because of all those units and all those countries and all that shit. My CPU is able to handle that pretty well, so that's why I was thinking it was a graphics issue.
I mean, I don't know. May or may not be. What I would say is that keep in mind EU4 has been out for how many years, and Panzer Corps isn't even out yet, and you're playing a pre-release beta that hasn't even been released. I'm sure there's still plenty of optimization and things like that they're working on and polishing. So I wouldn't get too hung up on the frame rates. I saw the same thing. It got a little... I didn't look at the actual frame rates, but I could feel it getting a little bit choppy at points. But again, it's a pre-release beta that's almost a month away from release from when we're recording this. So I wouldn't really get too hung up on performance at that point.
Yeah, it was definitely the beta, so, I just wanted to ask if you guys experienced that, so I'm hoping that that's taken care of by release.
But anyway, I guess I will go, just so we don't spend 10 minutes on every one of our... We'll have a very long episode. My number 3 on my list, I was kind of debating going back and forth as we were kind of talking, and I guess I'll put this at number 3. I'm guessing someone else may have this on their list, but I'm going to go with Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts, which is a upcoming game by the folks over at Game Labs who made Ultimate General Gettysburg and Civil War. And it is basically 3D Rule the Waves is kind of the best way to describe it, where you are able to build your own ships and then sail them and fight them in the sort of late pre-Dreadnought era up to the sort of just before World War II era, so really the pinnacle era for big gun battleships, whether they're the pre-Dreadnoughts with 4 main guns or they're the super Dreadnoughts of the Queen Elizabeth class. 1890 to 1930 is the era my understanding the game is going to cover. The game is available currently if you buy it directly through Game Labs in early access. They have, I don't know how many scenarios they're up to. It's like 35 or something, maybe more than that. That you can play, but they're all just considered like the Battle Academy, which is basically like they'll give you criteria to design a ship. You do that, and then you have to fight it. I think the thing that I'm really anticipating, and I'm assuming are probably several months away from this coming out, but the thing I'm really anticipating is the campaign, because it's supposed to be a similar campaign to Rule the Waves, where you take over the reins as basically a naval secretary or first sea lord or whatever of one of the great powers in this time period, and then you're responsible for building the Navy, maintaining the Navy, upgrading ships, all of that stuff. And then if your country goes to war, then you have to fight those wars. And so that's the piece that I'm really excited about. We haven't seen that really yet. I think they accidentally opened up the campaign when the early access first came out, but really
I've played it.
Well, you suck. But the campaign is really what I'm excited about, and I'm assuming the game will probably not exit early access till late this year. But that's definitely on my list.
So this is not the game that I noticed Game Labs publishing like a countdown on my Twitter feeds, like 5, and then the next day 4, and then 3. So I'm assuming it's not this game that they're counting down.
I haven't seen that from them. No, I'm not. But I'm not following that either, so I don't know.
Okay. The ship designer I see on Steam looks really nice. It looks really beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, it's very well put together. It's like, almost like building a Lego set for your ship.
Yeah, it won't be that. I mean, they have walked back on one of their earlier ideas to actually allow you to literally Lego design each part, each segment of the ship.
Yeah, some of the stuff shows it like you're putting together the hull, and the hull forms are kind of predefined, but that's fine. I don't need to design my hull.
Yeah, I mean, some people were disappointed by that. I'm just going to put mine at number 3 as well. I also have Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought on my list, and it was a little bit weird for me to put it on because, yeah, we are already playing it. The early access was available in 2019. Early access has kind of blurred the excitement of releases. Like, it doesn't... I'm not, like, super excited about Ultimate Admiral Dreadnought now because I already kind of played it, and I have played the campaign. By the way, I played it... This was before it was supposed to be played, obviously. Somebody just found out the code that you need to, like, type on your keyboard to access it, and the game crashed immediately.
Oh, shit.
But I did see it, and I saw the research screen and all this, and I'm sure it's going to change. Nobody else will ever see those kind of screens because I'm sure it'll be much more polished by the time it's released. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to that as well. I mean, I love Rule of Waves. It's like one of the biggest things I do is Rule the Waves, so obviously Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts would have to be something I'd be paying attention to, and I am, and I'm hopeful. I actually returned to play it like a month ago, and they're having some issues balancing out gun damage and all that. I just wish the team the best of luck to get it all working, and hopefully all the battle stuff, which they are prioritizing right now, will not delay the campaign release by too much. So that's my number 3.
That was a quick 3, so I guess it goes back to me.
Yeah, thank you for THG for doing such a great job summarizing the game. It was perfect.
So I guess that brings us back to me on number 2. Number 2 on my most anticipated 2020 is, drumroll, Starship Troopers Terran Command. And I can hear gasping from Historical Gamer. So yes, this is on my list. Mainly, I think I've mentioned this multiple times. I am a horrendous, massive Starship Troopers fan, and that mixed with Slytherin, mixed with a really great strategy game developer, mix that with RTS, and you got a nice cake right there. You got a nice batter for a beautiful cake. So I'm very excited about this game. It's an RTS set in the Starship Troopers universe. You're going to have hero units. It's going to be RTS, like I mentioned. You're going to be able to take command of aerial assets. The graphics that I saw on it, you got to go to YouTube and check out some of the videos. It is absolutely gorgeous. I believe you're commanding squads all the way up to platoons. So it's just incredible from what I've seen. So I'm very excited. It's coming out in 2020, and yes, this is definitely on my I need to call out from work a week kind of games.
Do you know when in 2020 that's going to be released or projected?
I heard rumors of like this is not from Slytherin, but I thought I saw rumors on the forums for like the fall or winter.
Okay, good. I'll just jump into my number 2 real fast. This is a game that I don't think has gotten a lot of press. The backstory of this is I have loved every single one of VR Design's games, every single one of them that I've played, and they really loved. They've done Advanced Tactics Gold. They've done the Decisive Campaigns series, which of those, I played a lot of Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa. But Advanced Tactics Gold was probably my favorite game for maybe 2 or 3 years of my life. It was the top game. It's an amazing game. And now, VR Designs, Vic, they're coming out with a new game, and it's called Shadow Empire. This is a 4X-like title. So it's taking some of the game mechanics that people may be familiar with from either of his other, any of his other games. So it looks like it takes a lot of the like politics system that he had implemented for dealing with the staff situation in World War II Germany. He's taken a lot of that and put it, the whole dev team, the developers have taken that and put it into, you're now landing on a planet and you have to interact with, it's like Civilization a little bit, because you are building up, there's a lot of peacetime focus, which is completely new to the VR Designs games. Anyway, I am extremely excited about it, and I think it's going to be coming out pretty soon. It's extremely complicated. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less from a VR Designs game. Advanced Tactics Gold, I actually created a tutorial series on it, because it's one of those games that I really want people to be able to get into, and it's got a pretty steep learning curve, I think. But it's amazing, and this new one is, I was surprised to see how far away from the traditional World War II style combat that he's gone, or they have gone. But from what I've seen, I am very excited, because they've done a really good job of managing complex mechanics. Like, even when you learn more about the game and the little details under the hood, that's been really exciting to see in Advanced Tactics Gold and a Decisive Campaigns Barbarossa. So I'm expecting that in Shadow Empire, they're going to do a phenomenal job expanding really good game mechanics to all the diplomacy and the research side of things. So they basically taken one of my favorite games, definitely one of my favorite games of all time, and they've made it a 4X. So I'm excited. We'll see. I mean, I don't want to be. I've had my heart broken before, so I want to be a little cautious. Don't get too hyped. But it's my number 2, and that's only because my number 1 is something I've been waiting for many, many years. So this was a sleeper to me, Shadow Empire.
Looking at this game, I am on the Slytherin website, and I'm going to pull a Jerry Maguire moment. You had me at sandbox, deep management of your empire and economy.
Yeah, and they have very well established, I would say, good combat mechanics, and the fact that they're taking all that into this new realm is very exciting. Of course, I have to be a little bit tentative, a little reserved, because this is new. I don't know if they've done anything with economics and politics and diplomacy, and you have to deal with population management. All these things are new, so we'll see how it goes. But if it's anywhere near as successful as I feel their previous games have been, I'm really looking forward to it. So So Tishi, what's your second most favorite game for 2020?
It might be my number one, but I kind of want to preempt John because I think it'll be his number one.
Motherfucker, I know what you're going to do.
So I'm going to say Grand Tactician, The Civil War.
Mother...
Well, I'm interested to know what your number one is then. It's funny.
Well, this was my number one, but I know he was going to go before me, so I kind of wanted to jump out ahead of him.
You steal my thunder.
Well, tell me a little bit about it. I've only heard this title. I feel woefully unfamiliar with this title, considering a lot of people have mentioned it, so please tell me about it.
It is, I will say, I'll make it my number two. And the reason it's my number two, and I'll get this out of the way, is I'm worried they may be trying to do too much. And they may be a little over-ambitious, because this is a small group of, I think this is just mainly one programmer. I mean, the developer behind Grand Tactician, The Civil War is Oliver Keppelmuller, and he's also listed as the publisher on Steam. So it feels very much like a small-time project. But basically what this is imagine if you had Ajod's Civil War 2 from like a grand strategy layer type of a game with, I think, probably a better polished, better looking UI, a little bit more intuitive. But essentially, it's a grand strategy game where you have to manage, I think, we haven't seen it yet, we haven't actually played it yet, but it looks like based off all the dev diaries and all that you have to manage all of sort of the strategic elements of the Civil War, so managing manpower, recruitment, there's probably some political elements to this as well. Moving your armies across the map of the United States during the Civil War. And then when two armies meet, you go into a tactical battle, and you fight a tactical battle. So, sort of the mantra of like a Rome Total War, because then you go into a battle map and you fight a battle out, and I think it's 3D, but I'm not 100% sure. So essentially, if you took a free-flowing grand strategy campaign of like a game like Ajod, and you took the tactical elements of Ultimate General Civil War and you merged them into one game, and that's what this looks like it's trying to be. Additionally, there's things like managing attacks on forts on the blockade, having to actually strangle the South by blockading the South or trying to break through the blockade. If you're trying to smuggle supplies through the Union blockade as the South, managing all of that, it looks like a huge game. It looks like an incredibly ambitious project. Managing your general officers, building your navy as the Union or the Confederacy, all of these different things. And, it certainly seems epic in sort of a big way. But again, with a smaller studio, a little uneasy on whether they can do all of that effectively. But I guess we'll see. Everything we've seen so far looks really interesting and encouraging. They did make a game that I think is similar, although I'm imagining this will be much more refined, about the 7 Years' War, which came out several years ago. I think it was just called the 7 Years' War. And that game, I don't know. I haven't spent a ton of time in that game, but it was very deep. It was very complex as well. I don't think it was as polished as you would kind of hope or expect for what the Civil War game will end up being. So they just called that one the 7 Years' War. It looks like they're intending this to be the beginning of a series. That's what I think the Grand Tactician name is supposed to be for. So I think there's a lot of enhancements and changes, but I would imagine the 7 Years' War is similar in concept to what they're doing with Grand Tactician.
So this isn't the Civil War 2 meets what was that Civil War game? The Ultimate General Civil War. It's actually both of them together.
This is Ultimate General Civil War and Ajod's Civil War 2 had a baby.
Yeah, but I mean, it's actually both of them together.
I think
that's pretty crazy.
I'm going to kind of jump off and say, I feel like this is more of like a Scourge of War, Gettysburg kind of thing. I feel like it's that mixed with...
You think the battlefield is going to be that much more complex?
I feel like... Because I'm following all the dev diaries and the videos and stuff like that. So yes, this is going to be my number one most anticipated game of 2020. This game has literally blew my mind every time I read a dev diary. The passion and level of detail.
Tell me what I missed, by the way, Jean, as well.
So So I'll just starting from like the tactical map side, and I'll go to the campaign side. So there's a tactical engine, right? So when you're on the campaign side and two armies run into each other, it will generate a map of that area. And you're going to have the armies coming into the map at the right points. The cool thing about this game is the realism factor. So one thing that I really like that kind of impressed me is that commanders will reflect their historical attitudes toward one another. So let's say General A and General B hate each other, but General A is in charge of General B. And General A says, hey, I need you to attack this ridge at 2 o'clock. General B is going to be like, you know what? I hate that motherfucker. I'm going to attack at 4 o'clock. And, because I feel 4 o'clock is the better, he wants me to go through this valley. I'm going to go over the ridge. And so it's going to affect the gameplay of how that commander reacts to orders. So that was one thing that really kind of impressed me. Other things that they're adding is, of course, you have weather effects. You're going to have, the order of battle system. From what all the screenshots that I've been seeing, it is very detailed, and it looks to be very easy to move troops from like different corps to different units. You develop your leaders over time. Your leaders can also die. So like if you have General Stonewall Jackson and you put him in the front of the line, you're like, hey man, this is Manassas. Stonewall is gonna freaking take over the Union, and it gets hit and you're saying, oh shit, I just lost Stonewall. It's 1861. I'm fucked. And so stuff like that can happen.
Good riddance. Someone shoot that fucker.
But other things that I really like and that impress me, the graphics. So you have the tactical engine, and the battles remind me of Scourge of War. But what I really love about it is, like, let's say you zoom out in the tactical engine, right, in the tactical battle. It has a paper map, right, and it'll have, like, red and blue brigade, like red and blue rectangles to identify, like, Union or Confederate. And they will move around this old map. But as you zoom in, it goes to the actual, graphical map of, like, the terrain, hills and ridges and stuff like that. And it's almost like a Google Maps where you're like zooming in and it's just a fine transition. Like little stuff like that is like, holy shit, this is beautiful. So, I mean, I'm just scratching the surface. There's so much of this game. Like you were saying, there is the campaign side where you're going to be able to manage the economy. You can do General Scott's Great Snake Plan. There will be foreign influence. If you want to, there's just so much to this game. And I will tell you, like, this game has literally blew my mind multiple times to the point where I'm like, shit, you know what? Instead of a week off, I'm probably going to need to quit my fucking job. So, I might be exaggerating just a little bit, but yeah, it's one of the most incredible games I've been following.
Okay. Well, I'm glad I could preempt you there.
I really liked your I'm glad you did it because you gave a nice kind of like summary of the game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about it, but I do think there's enough in the 7 Years' War game that felt like it wasn't polished enough to give me pause, which is probably why I wouldn't really put it as my number one game on the list. Not because it doesn't do everything I want it to. I'm just worried about how, like, when you actually go through and play the game, are you going to get the experience you're talking about, John? Or are there going to be things that are kind of like, well, damn, this is an amazing idea, but, what the execution, does it hit?
I'm hoping. Even if I think I mentioned in one of the, as I was going through like a dev diary, even if they fuck it up, even if there's tons of bugs and some of the features don't come out, even if they come out with 3/4 of the features and the game is a buggy mess, it will still be an incredible game just based on even a 3/4 of those features being implemented.
If the game comes out and it's a buggy mess, it's still awesome. Like, come on, man.
I'll be honest, so when I originally played, I forgot what game was it. It might have been Hearts of Iron or back in the 90s, or it might have been Star Wars Rebellion. I think it was Star Wars Rebellion. it was one of the games when I was like a teenager and I played and it fucking kept crashing like once an hour. And it pissed me off, but the game was so engrossing and so immersive, and it just won my heart over that I was like, fuck it, it's worth the crash an hour. And I believe that I believe it's Star Wars Rebellion. That game I still play to this day because it's that amazing. Obviously, it doesn't crash like it did before. But even if the game is a buggy mess, I always kind of look at the games that are currently being released. Like a good example is Battlefront, right? Star Wars Battlefront that came in a couple years ago. When the game came out, it was just horrible. Like it got negative reviews. But over the last 2 years, the game has been refined with patches, DLCs, and every time I talk to my friends, like, dude, you gotta play Battlefront, it's incredible. I'm like, I thought that game sucked at launch. They're like, yeah, but it's incredible now. So even if they do launch the game and, you know, it is buggy and not all the features implemented, over time, you know, they'll fulfill that and it'll be that incredible game that everybody's talking about.
I have a question. What is the focus more on the strategic layer or is it more on the tactical? I'm just looking at like Steam, the screenshots available. It looks like the focus is more on the tactical. Is that the impression you guys have?
I don't think it's focused on the tactical. I think that the tactical is the part of the game that they had done first, and the strategic part of the game was where they were doing a lot of new development, and they were still figuring things out at the time they started doing some of the promotional stuff. Honestly, if you even look at it, like they had mentioned certain specific historical battles, I'm wondering how much their focus pivoted mid-development, because to me it felt like it was a little bit of Ultimate General Civil War, where the idea originally might have been like, hey, you've got these 15 historical battles that you fight through in sort of a chain, and maybe somewhat early on they changed the focus, but they had already built a lot of the battle mechanics, which is fine, because I don't think any of that necessarily plugs into how the strategic game works. But that was my impression, is that they had the tactical battle stuff more fleshed out while they were still figuring out some of the strategic stuff.
Okay.
And they already delayed the game, so that really gives me confidence that they were saying, no, it does, because, you know, to be honest, it does.
Everything is awesome podcast. You'll find a way to spin a delay as like a pro.
Thank God they delayed it.
I'm going to do a Bill and Ted's like, it's totally awesome, dude.
No, listen, guys, the fact that it's delayed means it's awesome. What?
I'll give you the reasoning behind that. So, you know, when a developer, when they announced the delay of this game, they were saying like, hey, we implemented a lot. The game is pretty much done, but we want to kind of make sure and kind of just basically keep enhancing, keep fleshing out the bugs, you know, kind of making the game just perfect, you know, keep basically enhancing and knocking out the bugs. That's why they delayed it to summer 2020, is they were planning to release, I believe, at the end of 2019. But they're like, look, we're going to take another half a year. We're going to knock out all these bugs. We're going to make sure that when we release the game, it's released properly. And that really impressed me. So it's that they could have just released it and say, hey, look, there's bugs in this game, but here it is. We'll fix it over time. But like, look, this is our baby, and we want to make sure that when it releases right. And that really impressed me.
I mean, I respect a developer who delays a little bit, possibly taking some hit on themselves or not getting funds back as quickly to polish things. But this can obviously be taken too far. I mean, I'm not sure if you're familiar with this game called Star Citizen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that part of my unease, you're right. Obviously, if it's a buggy mess, they should not release it until it's not a buggy mess. Every bit of software is going to have some bugs, but like it needs to be playable. My concern is more of that, did it get delayed because when they went to kind of put things together, they realized, oh God, we took on way too much. Like that's where my hesitancy to say, like, are they trying to do too much with too limited of resources? It's one thing to say like, oh, Paradox, they're gonna patch their games over time, or you know, DICE, they're gonna patch Battlefront over. Is it DICE? Whoever does Battlefront, they're gonna patch this over time, and it's gonna be great. Well, yeah, but those are multi-million-dollar companies with the resources to do that. these guys aren't that. So, again, I view development of a game when you're a smaller studio as much more iterative. And if you try to hit a home run in your first at bat with a game like this, there's a very big risk you're going to miss, and you're going to miss bad. And I don't want it to come down as me being overly negative about this, because this is on my list at number 2 for a reason. I'm trying to temper expectations. And when you tell me we had to delay the game for 6 months because it was too buggy, it wasn't polished enough, it just makes me worried that they put it together and then they realized that this wasn't even close to done. And are they even going to be able to address all the bugs, all the issues that they found, or are they just going to, sort of slap it together so that it kind of functions, right? So we don't need to spend time arguing about why you think it's going to be perfect, and I'm a little bit less sanguine. I mean, obviously, I hope you're right, John. I get a little bit uneasy about it, but hey, I'm excited about it. I want this to be a huge success. I think what they're trying to do is what every Civil War game fan has wanted for a long time, and really we haven't experienced. Ultimate General Civil War had a campaign, but it was kind of more like Civil War Generals 2, where there are these linked battles and there's very limited ability to influence the following battles. Scourge of War had a great tactical engine, but it was focused on an individual battle or individual scenarios within battles, and so you couldn't really experience the campaigning aspect of it. Other games like Fort Sumter to Appomattox, which was this really old, like 1990s Civil War game, had a lot of the grand strategy element, and you could manage your armies. Like in many ways, I see what they're doing strategically is the same as that, except when two armies met, there was no real tactical engagement. I think there have been a few games that have had that tactical layer, but they've always been, they were a long time ago, so we haven't seen that since sort of the adoption of 3D. Just we'll see. I want it to be great. I want to be excited about it, and I am, but we'll see what comes out of it. But that being said, why don't we move on to your number 1, Tortuga?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this game now, too, because of you guys, but let's shepherd this on. I think that your number 1 is what we want next, THG.
Oh, did you do your number 1 already, Tortuga?
Drum roll.
I didn't say my number 1. Do you want me to go?
Oh, yeah, I mean, I just shared my number 2, so I don't want to go back to back.
Okay, sure. Yeah, my number 1 is Distant Worlds 2. I am extremely excited about this game. Distant Worlds 1, by the way, I do not strongly fear it'll suffer from like a buggy release. I'm extremely excited about it. Actually, there's been like a small something revealed that it's going to be 3D. A lot of people were wondering whether, if you've played Distant Worlds, it's 2D, and they've gone to a 3D engine for this. I'm pretty sure, or I think it's been confirmed. So I don't know. I just love Distant Worlds. It's one of my favorite games of all time. So
have they shared much about like what's going to be in it? Because I've seen a few screens and I've definitely saw it and I was excited, but I was having trouble figuring out like what's it going to do.
No, my excitement is mostly based on the fact that I love Distant Worlds and I know that they are coming out with this. They've been this is one of the games that may not be released in 2020 in the end. I mean, there definitely has already been some some like deadlines that have been bypassed. They expected to have some really good information originally by like early 2019. We didn't get any information until the very end of December 2019. So they promised us information in 2019, and I feel like they probably got to the end of 2019 and were like, oh crap, let's just release some minimal amount of information to satisfy what we said. And their policy with this, as far as I know, is it's done when it's done. And this is Matrix Games, and I believe that they have the funding. It's not a huge team, and I think that they are funded based on Matrix other success to basically just let this develop. I'm sure that there's somebody who will pull the plug on it if it goes on for too long, but I think they really are just going to let it develop until it's finished.
I think that, I would guess that they will as well, because I don't know if you remember, but when they first started moving their games onto Steam, Distant Worlds, I think, had been out for like 6 years already. They put it on Steam and it was like in the top 10 on the Steam top sellers list for like 2 weeks. I think the only other game that I've seen of theirs that was as well received on Steam was Command Modern Air Naval Operations. It seems to have a more broad audience than a lot of their titles, because I think 4X space games are a much bigger audience than Matrix typically targets.
Yeah. So that's my number one. I'm really looking forward to it. I wish we knew a little bit more about it, but what's mainly fueling my enthusiasm is just how great the original game was, and hoping that the transition to 3D, I mean, it's a lot to look forward to, but it's also a lot to be skeptical about. I feel that the transition to 3D, if it's done well, it'll be good, but I'm a little nervous about that.
That's a fair thing to be nervous about. Now, I think, Jean, we did your number one with Grand Tactician, and you already did your number two. My number two is Grand Tactician, so is it me? Am I the last one up?
Yeah.
All right. Well, my number one game, I'm going to cheat a little bit, and I think we may talk about a couple other games for a few minutes outside of our top list, because there's a lot of games that have been announced. I know you have some you wanted to talk about, Tortuga.
Yeah.
I have a qualified number one, and I will share a little bit more than just my number one, because I don't have a lot to say about my number one. So, honorable mention number one is Burden of Command, which is a game...
Wait, what's going on here?
I'm breaking the rules. Breaking the rules.
Just give us your number one, then we can talk about all the other.
I'm going to say...
Give us your number one, and we'll do honorable mentions after that.
Burden of Command would be number one, except I've already talked about it in the past, and it's been on my list in previous years, and I don't like to put the same game on the same list year after year after year if it hasn't come out yet. So, Burden of Command, I'm pretty sure it will come out this year. It is I think it's turn-based tactical combat game where basically the focus of the game is you are in command of, I think, a company of infantry during World War II from the campaigns in North Africa through to Italy up into Europe. And it follows you as you kind of lead a company of troops, and you have to make these decisions that a company commander would have to make, right? Like, are you going to send your lieutenant out there to suicidally charge a machine gun because you've been given orders to do something about it? Or how are you going to approach that? And you're going to attempt to learn who your men are. You're going to attempt to build those bonds. And it seems to be a game that's really focused on actually building this sense of what is it like to command soldiers in combat. And I think too many war games out there are just like, oh, these are my cute little sprite guys, and I'm going to charge them, and they're going to all die, and I won't really care. And it's all about taking that magical hill off yonder, and nothing else matters. There have been some sort of first-person games that have tried to address that a little bit. I think the Brothers in Arms games were similar, like, FPS type games, but they tried to tell a narrative story about a small group of soldiers that was kind of going through war and what that was like. And it seems like Burden of Command is really going to do that and really going to address that. And the only reason it's not number one on my list is because it has been on my list in previous episodes. And we actually had an interview with the developer of Burden of Command. Was it like a year and a half ago, John? It was a while ago.
It was before I was here. So.
Yeah, it was before the back in the pre-Tortuga days.
The dark times.
Back in
BTP. I don't know. Was it
the dark times before the Empire?
BPT-1 or BPT-2, or I'm not quite sure, but before Tortuga Power. So that would be number one on my list because I'm pretty sure it's coming out this year.
Now, I will say that was also one of my potential top three. I have this one, Burden of Command, and I have another one, which I'm not sure if they're actually going to be released, and I'm kind of confident that they won't be. So I didn't put them on. So okay. I will say that Burden of Command was also one that I'm very interested in, but it didn't make my top three because I'm just banking on it not being released this year.
Okay. I'm wondering if my number one is the other one that's on your list that may not come out this year, but I'm going to mention it anyway because I'm really excited about it. And that is called Sea Power Naval Combat in the Modern Era. It's a game we know almost nothing about. So I don't have a ton to say. But
my number one game is a game I don't know much about.
For those of you who are unfamiliar, Killerfish Games, the developer behind Cold Waters, broke up. So they no longer exist. They built Cold Waters, they made Atlantic Fleet, and Atlantic Fleet was a turn-based game, but Cold Waters was sort of a real-time simulation of like you're a submarine and you're either fighting in sort of a hypothetical Third World War in the 1980s, 1960s, or they built a South China Sea scenario in the early 2000s. And so you're commanding an American sub, and it has a quasi-dynamic campaign, and you kind of sail around on the map. You get different orders, and you have to accomplish them. And it was done in there's a little bit arcadey to call a true simulation. It's not like a Dangerous Waters level game of detail, but they did a pretty good job with things like managing being above or below the layer, towed sonar arrays, cavitation, all these other things that you would expect from a submarine game. I think they did a really good job. In many ways, it was kind of the spiritual successor to, was it Red Storm Rising, the old, was it SSI game or Microprose game from the 80s, but in a more modern sense. And that developer broke up, and I think there were 3 or 4 people in that company, but 2 of them are now doing a game called Sea Power Naval Combat in the Modern Era. And we don't know a ton about it other than it sounds like, and it looks like from the images they've shared, presumably they've got the graphics pack and all these other things from Cold Waters, except now they're basically trying to make a fleet command type game. So they're taking Cold Waters, they're saying, instead of just focusing on a submarine, we're going to make it about, above water combat as well. And sort of like if you could imagine Command Modern Air Naval Operations having like a real true 3D sort of a gameplay experience, I'm imagining it's going to be that, but probably a slightly reduced level of fidelity than what Command has. And sort of really trying to be like a new version of Fleet Command with, again, a quasi-dynamic campaign in the same way that Cold Waters had. And so that's about all we know. The developer did a long interview with Jive Turkey on a live stream of his, and that's sort of how we know about it. They have a Facebook group, but really, I don't know if that's coming out this year. It may be a little bit too early, but I'm really excited about it because I would love a Fleet Command game with a dynamic campaign, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
I was wondering, is it on Steam?
No, they don't even have a Steam page for it yet.
So I have heard about that game. Basically, people have mentioned it to me because I do Cold Waters on my channel, and I did not even have that on my radar for 2020.
Probably 2021 if we're being fair.
Yeah, I didn't know. Have you heard that it might be even released in 2020? I guess if they're borrowing assets from Cold Waters.
I thought they said something on Jive Turkey's thing saying like we're a ways away, but this was at the end of last year when they did the interview. So
is it called Sea Power Naval Combat in the Missile Age?
Yeah, you're right. Missile Age. I may have misspoke.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm on that.
I don't know. I guess we'll see. I don't know for sure. I'm hoping that there's like an early access. Because
I don't know about early access. I haven't heard. I've basically heard nothing about it. I've only heard that Jive Turkey interviewed the guy during one of his streams, and nothing else.
I mean, they talked a fair bit about what they were going to do in the stream, and I watched it. So that's kind of where my information came from mostly. But again, I'm hoping that it goes to early access. I think they talked about probably only doing one campaign. They want to make sure that it's one campaign that's really good, as opposed to, I think they kind of implied that the way that Cold Waters worked, I don't think they were terribly thrilled with the 1960s campaign and the way it played.
Because torpedoes sucked.
Right. So, I think they were acknowledging, hey, this didn't work with multiple campaigns. We really want to have it be one solid campaign. So depending on how much work they actually have to do, I could see it being ready for early access like in November. It's still 9 months away.
I have to say, I don't know when this game will be released. I don't think it's going to be released in 2020. But if it is, it would probably, I don't know, it would be in the top 3, even if it had to tie something to get there. War in the East 2? Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2. Have we heard when the release date for that is? Somebody mentioned 2020 at some point. I just don't believe it. That's why it's not in my top 3.
No, they've said it's 2020. There was a War Game article. I think they said like Q2, Q3 is what they're planning. It's been in beta for a while, but it is coming out. According to an interview they gave, they basically said our focus for this year 2x3. The developer said our focus this year is finishing up War in the East 2, and then like Steel Panthers Pro or whatever the next version of that game is their focus for the later half of the year.
Oh wow! Okay, wow. So War in the East 2, we have to talk about that. That's an amazing title, which is going to be coming out then. I feel like, I don't even have that much information. My idea of it is take War in the West, update War in the East with that kind of stuff, and maybe add some better UI. I don't know.
Yeah,
I know nothing about it.
That would be on my list if I had. I'm excited to play it. I didn't play much War in the East. Originally, it was a game I wanted to, but I just never got into it, and now I'm really excited for War in the East 2, because I will definitely spend a lot of time jumping into that.
Seems like a big game.
Oh yeah, I mean, I play War in the Pacific, so it's like a super more polished version of that with a lot of... It's very different, obviously. It's a different theater.
I was following it on the forum. I rarely do that nowadays, which is a shame. It's just because I have too many things to follow. But War in the East is not one of the ones that I'm following extremely closely. I was at some point perusing the forum and looking at the updates, and they were talking about the optimization they were doing and what the look of it is going to be like. And from what I heard back then, the closest thing they have to it right now, they're borrowing a lot of stuff from War in the West, which was I would say is a slightly more polished version of War in the East between the two. And they're going to be doing... I mean, the air side of things was obviously very abstracted, very kind of weird in War in the East. But it was, a lot more detailed and done, at least. It was probably added... it adds more complexity, but it makes it a little bit more realistic in War in the West.
Yeah, this is what they said about it in December, and you're right, we haven't seen much about it, but they said, finishing War in the East 2 has been a top priority for 2x3. It's expected to be feature complete within the next quarter. They said this in Q4, which means the final release will depend on final testing and polish time, but we expect it will be a 2020 release.
Okay, all right. I have others. So I think we should at least... This is now an honorable mention, because I'm pretty sure it will be released in 2020. We have Ck3, Crusader Kings 3.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we should probably do a full episode on that one that comes out, but that's definitely one that I would say is up there in terms of most anticipated. I just haven't been following it super close, so I'm not sure what to say about it. It almost needs no
introduction, right? Everyone, I think everyone knows CK2. They know CK3, what it's going to be, an updated CK2.
If you haven't, get out from under the rock.
Yeah, exactly. we should be a little bit more informative, but I don't even know how to classify CK3. I've only watched the trailer that Paradox released about it.
My honorable mention is a more generic game, and I was going to add Crusader Kings 3, but Tortuga, you beat me to it. But
I have a whole list. I should have let you do that one.
So my honorable mention is a game that I saw a trailer about it like a month ago, and it kind of blew me away. And it's a game that I played like back when I was at back in Paris Island, back in South Carolina. It's Age of Empires 4. Now, the reason this game kind of took my breath away was the video trailer, which I'll put in the description, looks absolutely incredible. I mean, it is absolutely gorgeous. I actually, when the video first started, I was like, oh, this must be some kind of movie. I'm like, no, this is in-game gameplay. And I was like, holy shit, this is incredible. This is absolutely gorgeous. The reason it's not on my top 3 is I've only seen videos. I don't know. I didn't see any of the UI. I don't know pretty much anything besides that the game is gorgeous. It's kind of like looking at a beautiful poster of your favorite supermodel, and you're like, wow, she's incredible. I wish I can marry her and spend my entire life with her. But you don't know anything about her. She could be a complete bitch, so.
Well, I have even more to throw at the people. Just 2 more that I want to actually say anything about, but then there's another 3 that I at least want to caution people are coming out or may be coming out. First one is a game called Per Aspera. It's actually, as far as I know, it's not a combat game whatsoever. It's probably something like Surviving Mars or whatever the Paradox title was. It's a Mars survival, it's a colony, Mars planet management. I don't have much to say about it, other than it looks really interesting, and you might want to keep your eye. If you were a fan of Surviving Mars or any of those like colony building games, it could be interesting. There's also another game by Amplitude Studios, which has come out. Not another game by Amplitude Studios, but another game, and this one is by Amplitude Studios, who's famous for their Endless Space and the Endless Legend series. That's called Humankind. So it's basically the new Civilization. As far as I know, I don't know what's up with Civ 6, if there's a Civ 7 planned or whatever, but Humankind is, in my opinion, going to be the next Civ game. So it's definitely one that everyone who's interested in... I think a lot of these are 4X games, but I have a strong passion for those games. So Yeah, Humankind. I don't know. Have you guys even heard of any of those? Probably not per Asper. It's a really small game. But
I've been following Humankind. I mean, looking at the game, the graphics look good. As soon as I saw a screenshot, I initially thought it was Civilization because it looks almost exactly like Civilization. The only few things that kind of caught my attention besides the graphics were that cultures could merge. So I know in Civilization you can pick German or American, and then you control that culture. But in this game, like German and Americans can kind of become like a melting pot and kind of have like a civilization with both those kind of cultural traits. But besides that, I haven't, I don't know. It just, for me to kind of like get really excited about the game, it needs to do something completely different than Civilization. Add a space component, like in the end game for Civilization is, that, it's the end game in modern times. If they were able to take, modern times and then say, all right, look, we'll mix Civilization with maybe like a sci-fi space exploration kind of game. So once you reach, modern era and you get into the space and you can colonize all the worlds and do a Civilization on other worlds, that would have been different. But I just feel like almost like this is Civilization, just with a mod.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically if you played Endless Legend, Endless Legend was kind of like a cool modification way of looking at Civ 5. Actually, the expansion of cities, which happens in Civ 6, is something they took from Endless Legend. But Endless Legend never really caught me, so I'm really hoping that this is the game that Amplitude Studios really, really gets me hooked on. So that's my hope. And I know that we want to try to make this short, so let me just rattle off the other three. There's Kerbal Space Program 2. I liked Kerbal Space Program, so it's exciting to know Kerbal Space Program 2 is coming out, but it's not something which, I lose sleep at night, because Kerbal Space Program is already something which scratches that space rocket building itch. Port Royale 5 or Port Royale 4, if you ever played Port Royale or...
I didn't know they were making a new one. I played Port Royale, I think,
what was
2
the other
or 3
game, the European one? I can't remember.
Was there
Port Royale was the Caribbean one, and there's...
Anno?
Not Anno. It's practically... Patrician 3, Patrician 4, where I really enjoyed those. It's the same idea. Patrician and Port Royale are pretty much the same game, but in different areas, as far as I know.
I didn't know there was a new Port Royale, but that would be on my list too, because I played a ton of, I think 2 or 3, I can't remember which one, but I played a ton of it back in the day.
That's why I thought I would just grocery list these last ones. If people are interested in them, they can look up more about them. Port Royale 4 is scheduled for 2020, so that might be interesting. And the last one is Distant Kingdoms. I really don't know much about this game, but it looked kind of interesting. It's
got a good name.
It's got... It's a medieval city builder type thing. It looks kind of a little bit like Banished. Yeah, and if you're interested in that kind of thing, maybe go check that out. So
cool. Well, that was a list longer than 3 for everybody, but it was, I think, it's a good list of exciting games coming up.
You didn't let me know. We got to lay the ground rules before.
I figured it was the same as the last episode which you did, which was 3 and 3.
So... finishing up, I wanted to ask you guys, what are you drinking?
Right now, it's 12:40 in the morning, and I'm drinking coffee.
What kind of coffee?
I don't know. Some beans I got at Whole Foods. Some kind of organic coffee. I don't know.
Ooh, getting all fancy. It's the Rockefeller.
Well, I did buy recently a 16-year-old. I did buy recently a 16-year-old bottle of Lagavulin single malt Scotch, so I'm looking forward to that, but I haven't had that yet.
Did you put on a second mortgage for that?
No, but if we start going back to hey, it's episode 50, and so to celebrate that, we need a 50-year-old bottle of Scotch, then I might need to take out a second mortgage.
Oh gosh. I am just drinking Coke, but you spoke of buying. Was that a
Coca-Cola?
Coca-Cola, and actually, I ran out. I was expecting this episode to be shorter or to not drink so much, and I have that kind of like pasty soda mouth, so I
oh gosh.
Yeah, anyway, but for some reason that coffee. Have you guys ever had the chocolate covered coffee beans that they have at like Trader Joe's or probably Whole Foods?
Yes, but I don't. I mean, it was one of those things where it was like, "Hey guys, I got these chocolate covered coffee beans. You want to try a few?" And I was like, "Okay."
Yeah. Anyway, I suddenly am craving one of those after THG's comment. So,
well, it's not quite 11 o'clock your time. There probably are stores still open you can go check out.
No, that's fine. I need to sleep tonight.
We're not playing EU4 after this?
Well, we are, but not until those coffee beans. When I have those chocolate covered coffee beans, it's like a triple espresso to me. I don't know why it hits me really hard. So
I had espresso
John?
the other day when we were playing EU4 at like 2 a.m.
Oh, that's nuts. I'm much more sensitive to caffeine.
What are you drinking, John?
I'm one of those people that once I find something I like, I don't kind of
El Guapo?
steer away from it. Just the right. No. So I'm trying to limit that. So I'm 36, and I started drinking around 11, somewhere around there. I'm from Brooklyn, so like it's okay, like we start early there. And so my liver took a beating last 30 years. So I'm trying to like lower that quite a bit. So I'm kind of substituting a lot of that, or pretty much that, with coffee. And so I get the most blackest, bitterest coffee, and it's kind of doing the job. So I get the Italian roast black coffee from Starbucks. No ice, just complete black, shit ton of beans, and I know it's good, but it kind of makes my wife gag a little bit. So, oh, and I forgot to mention, I got married last month. Forgot to mention that.
Congratulations. Second of all, when you said you started drinking at 11, I had no idea how to parse that. I was like, you mean like 11 this morning? Like 11 this evening?
Oh, no.
I really was craving a beer tonight, by the way. I would have had a beer next to me, but we have no beer. So add that to the number of things I need to go get from the grocery store.
Amazon Prime it.
Oh, earlier today, I did have a margarita, because it is margarita day.
Oh, wow.
Or it was margarita day. I had a friend in town when we were hanging out. But yeah, just drinking coffee now. All right, well, that does it for episode number 50. I think a great and enthralling episode. If you're still with us, thank you very much for tuning in to yet another episode of the Single Malt Strategy podcast. For Jean, for myself, and Eric, thanks for tuning in, guys. And until next time, we're out.